Okay, so now we have 4 minus negative 6b plus 1. So I'm not just subtracting negative 6b, I'm also subtracting 1. So I'm going to bring down my 4, but then I'm going to distribute my subtraction sign. A negative times a negative is a positive 6b. And then a negative times a 1 is a negative 1. And then I'm going to combine the constants. So I have a positive 4 and I have a negative 1. That's 3, positive 3. So I could write this as 6b plus 3, or I could write this as 3 plus 6b. All right. Now, when there's a plus sign, you don't actually need to distribute the plus sign, because if this was like a positive 1 and I distributed it, I would get positive 1a, and positive 1 times negative 3b is just negative 3b. So as you can see, if it's a plus sign and I distribute it, nothing happens. So you don't need to distribute your plus signs. So I have 5a plus a minus 3b. I can combine like terms. 5a plus a is 6a minus 3b. I could also write this as negative 3b plus 6a, because in both cases, the 3b is negative, and in both cases, the 6a is positive. All right. Again, when it's a plus sign, you do not need to distribute. So this is really negative 3 plus 2p minus 3q. None of these are like terms, so this is actually my answer in simplest form. Here, there is a negative sign in front of the parentheses. So I'm not just subtracting a, I'm also subtracting negative b. So I'm going to bring down my first term, negative a. I'm going to cover this up with my finger, and I'm going to distribute this subtraction sign, which is really like multiplying everything in the parentheses by a negative 1. So negative 1 times a is negative a. Negative 1 times negative b is a negative times a negative. That's just a positive b. Okay, I can combine like terms, because negative a and negative a is negative 2a plus b. The other way I could write this is b minus 2a, because in both cases, the negative 2a is negative and the b is positive. All right, here it's a little bit different, because instead of the parentheses, in front of the parentheses, it's not just a negative, it's a negative 2. So here I'm going to bring down my 3h and cover it with my finger now. Here we're taking the negative 2 and we're distributing it to all terms inside the parentheses. So let's see. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. Negative 2 times 4h is negative 8h. Then I'm going to combine like terms. So I have a positive 3h and I have a negative 8h. Negatives win by 5h. So this is negative 5h minus 2, or I could write it as negative 2 minus 5h. Okay, same thing here. There's not just a negative in front of the parentheses, there's also a 2 in front of the parentheses. I'm going to bring down the first term, 6m, and then I'm going to cover it up with my finger now, and I'm going to take the negative 2 and I'm going to distribute it to all the terms inside the parentheses. So negative 2 times 4n is negative 8n. Negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. None of these terms are like terms, so this is my answer in simplest form. All right, when there's a plus sign, you don't need to distribute. So this is really 6x plus 4y. That's my first expression, 6x plus 4y. In my second expression, I have another plus 4y, and I have a plus x. So I line up the terms that are like terms, and then I combine them. So 6x plus 1x is 7x, and 4y plus 4y is 8y. So there's my answer in simplest form. When it's subtraction, I'm going to make that negative into a negative 1. I'm going to distribute it to all the terms that are after the subtraction sign inside those parentheses. So my first expression is 5x plus 3y. Now I'm going to distribute the negative sign to these terms. Negative 1 times 4x is negative 4x. Negative 1 times a negative 2y is a negative times a negative. That's a positive 2y. Now I can combine like terms. So here's my 5x minus 4x. That's just positive 1x. And we have a 3y plus 2y, and that's positive 5y. All right, here's another negative sign. I'm going to make this into a -1, and I'm going to distribute it to all the terms after the parentheses. So I start off with -3x plus 2 for my first expression. Then this is -8 minus 5x. -8 minus 5x. I line up the like terms. This would be -8x minus 6, or I could say -6 minus 8x using the commutative property. All right, lastly, if this is a plus sign, I don't need to distribute the positive, so I'm just going to make my columns of like terms. So I have -5x minus 2b plus 1, and then I have a positive 2b for my second term, and a positive 9x. Now I start combining like terms. -5x plus 9x is 4x. -2b and positive 2b are additive inverses, so they cancel out to equal 0. And then I'm left with my constant of plus 1. So I could say 4x plus 1, or I could say 1 plus 4x.